Hello everyone, and welcome to my Costumer Quarantine 20 Questions, hosted by So Loud. Details down below. So, here are 20 questions that I'll run through. However, to start with, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about what I'm wearing. So, I'm wearing my dark blue wool tailcoat with vintage brass buttons, and my red wool waistcoat, all with vintage brass buttons, white linen shirt with linen striped ruffles, dark blue pantaloons with black braidwork designs inspired by military hussar uniforms in the style of a Hungarian knot, black Hessian boots with gold tassels. My cravat, the pattern is from Penny River Costumes, who I'll link down below, and my sling is by the ever wonderful Burnley and Trowbridge. The first costume I made totally from scratch was a Victorian summer frock coat using a really quite naff grey linen polyester cotton mix material with a velvet collar but lined with pink kimono silk in the cherry blossom design. And I was so proud of it and so happy about it, but I also wasn't at the same time. It was quite a difficult thing for me to do, so I used a reconstructing history pattern, which is a pattern I wouldn't necessarily recommend for beginners, intermediates or advanced costumers. I made it for an event and I wore it at the event. I was still having to sew on the way to the event, sewing on these awful plastic buttons, and I had a great time, but it's an outfit which I've kept as a record of what I've done, what I have shamefully done, and it reminds me of how far I've come, but also that we all start somewhere. What is my favourite costume I've made, or what am I most proud of? I suppose probably my favourite would probably be my cream linen and blue braided hussar uniform, which was an absolute nightmare to make, but really good fun as well, and required a lot of research. So in the design, it requires over 150 metres of braid. I don't know what that is in yards. So I hand dyed the braid. The linen is vintage French linen, so it's got a good weight to it, and the braiding design is from an original source from 1807. So the designs and swirls all over it are completely period accurate, and the buttons down the front were made for me by Gina B Silkworks, Gina Barrett. She is a fantastic lady and an unparalleled authority on buttons, so I'd check out her channel as well as just buying her supplies. That's where I get all my button supplies from. What costume do I dream of making? I suppose I'd really like to make an over-the-top, gilded, embroidered, beautiful 18th century man's suit, probably from the mid-18th century, you know, with the great big sweeping skirts and all the gold embroidery. But that's a potential project for future Zack, with a lot more money. Because this stuff costs money. It did back then. The people that were commissioning those things at that time were the millionaires of their day, rather than today as reenactors or costumiers. We can get close, but if you really want to push the boat out, you need to go that extra step. One day, maybe, although I don't think so. I'm just quite happy sort of making what I've got. What is a sewing task you love versus a sewing task you hate? Well, I suppose what I really love are the final detailed stitches, the delicate top stitching, the buttonholing, and all those delicate stitches that hold a garment together and really makes it pop when it's finished. You know, those delicate details. In terms of sewing tasks I hate, I don't hate any of the stitches, because without any of those construction stitches, back stitches, running stitches, pad stitches, stoting stitches, there would be no garment to create, and without those stitches you wouldn't have a final product, and you wouldn't have a garment you love. So I think you take it all as one, and you love every part of the construction of a garment, because you know that it will give you the required effect. Would I rather sew in silk or wool? Now, generally speaking for tailoring, I suppose my favourite would have to be wool, because you can mould it, ease it, stretch it, do all the wonderful things that tailoring requires. It can also be quite forgiving, I suppose. However, silk does have its place, and I think that place should be everywhere, because I love silk. But if I was given the option to only ever stick to one fabric, I think it would have to be wool. But I'd still sneak in a silk waistcoat somewhere along the line. The sun just got really bright. Would I rather go to a themed event or pick my own theme? Now, for theme, are we talking about era or are we talking about a theme within that historical period? If it's an era, I'd much rather go to an event where a particular decade or a particular period is referenced, so that everyone is wearing the same sort of outfits for the period in a period venue. There's nothing quite like it. If you go along to an event and it's all sorts of eras, so you have some Tudor, some 18th century, maybe some 20s, maybe, you know, some mid-19th century Victorian, I think that with all those together it sort of loses the effect. Yeah, it might be fun, but it's not necessarily something I'd do. But to pick my own theme, I think I'd probably go for a nice full 18th century event. All the silk and wigs and sparklings. I just absolutely love it. Would I rather attend a big ball or an intimate dinner? Now, as much as I do like attending great big balls and events, I can find them really draining, and they take a lot out of me and they require a lot of effort. But I think especially at the moment, I'd much rather be attending an intimate dinner with some good close friends of mine, because I miss them all so much. Do I like wigs, hair pieces, or my own hair? Now, for me as a man, I rarely wear hair pieces or a wig, except if I'm doing 18th century. So generally I'm using my own hair. I've got a few different wigs. They're mainly appropriate for the 18th century and for formal courtwear in the early 19th century. However, a style I've also seen for male courtwear of the early 19th century is the stylistic hair of the day, but also powdered. That's something I'd like to try, maybe for an event. Oh, having powdered hair wasn't just for the wig style, but was also for formal court events. That would be an interesting thing to try out, I think. Name 5 small businesses that you should check out. Firstly, Burnley and Trowbridge. This is one of their cravats. They're also exceptionally good with notions, so silk sewing threads, materials such as linens, wools, cottons. They've got some beautiful reproduction cravats. So they're based in Williamsburg, actually, and they're great friends of mine. I'd highly recommend them. It's okay. You can just walk through. It's fine. Why?
Right.
I'll just edit you out.
Right.
I mean, you're not in it.
Yeah.
It's Dad. So although not strictly costume related, I would of course recommend Little Bits Cosmetic Company, where I get my hair powders and other cosmetics, as well as my white face powders and rouges. But I also use their products on a daily basis, so I use their cold cream, their rose cold cream in the evenings, and also, what you can't smell right now is that I'm wearing Le Bouquet Impératrice. And Le Bouquet Impératrice is actually one of the perfumes worn by the Empress Josephine, and they've recreated it and it's absolutely wonderful. Along that same line of smell, another thing that you can also try is taste. And that's why I'd really recommend the Copper Pot. And they make amazing 18th century hot chocolate with long pepper and cardamom, and it's got spices to it, and it's just so Moorish. It's the perfect thing to have of an evening, or as I like to do it, after every ball or intimate dinner or something. My thing is I always bring along some of it and I make some, and it always goes down a treat and everyone absolutely loves it. It's the perfect end to an event. But he doesn't just do hot chocolates, he also does historical recipes for making gingerbread and 18th century curries, also medieval stews. Such an amazing array of products. I'll put his link down below as well. And then of course, finally, although I could mention many, many more, no outfit is complete without the right accessories, so I'd recommend American Duchess for their shoes, because there's no point having a full outfit together and wearing, God forbid, trainers or something like that. It really works to have everything sorted, and their shoes are fantastic. I wear them every day. Name 5 YouTubers that you should check out. Well, I think you should check out the Vintage Egyptologist. Some really good friends of mine from Connecticut. They're a husband and wife couple, and they are archaeologists and professors in Egyptology, and they wear 1930s and 1920s clothes every day, and they are absolutely delightful and fascinating. I'd go check out their recent video on ancient Egyptian cat memes, because it's hilarious. I would also recommend a really good friend of mine, Jenny, of SensibilityPatterns, who has her own YouTube channel, and she's an absolute delight. I've spent many a wonderful event and evening drinking with her, and she is absolutely spectacular, is so knowledgeable about women's wear, and has her own line of patterns, which I highly recommend. I would also, of course, recommend my good friend and costumer Nikki Lamb, who does these great videos and vlogs about showing events and everything, and there are a few that I'm in as well, and she's just a great laugh, and also my Secret Santa, which I will get round to when I can leave the house again. And the final YouTuber, amongst many, that I want to point out is Sally Pointer. She makes the most amazing stockings and hose. So the stockings I was wearing last time were hers, and they're the most beautiful silk. They're so comfortable, and she's so knowledgeable. Anything to do with knitwear from like the Neolithic period up until now, she is an absolute master. I really, really recommend her stuff, as well as she's got some really interesting videos on natural dyeing, which are just fascinating to watch. My favourite colour. Now, I suppose my favourite colour would probably be scarlet red. It looks really good against my pale vampiric complexion. But I also really like duck egg blue, because that really works well for my complexion. So I think it very much depends on time of year, but I think I'd stick to red if I had to. Pearls or sparkles? Well, as a man, there aren't very many options for wearing pearls, unless it's the Elizabethan and Tudor period and I'm covered in pearls around my doublet, or maybe have a pearl earring. I might try sporting a pearl earring for maybe the 1790s. I think sparkles. For example, for men with sparkles, I think you're looking at cut steel, so cut steel swords and buttons and hat decorations, all this glinting, coruscating light, which would be perfect under candlelight, as well as the sparkle of sequin embroidery. So I think if given the option, definitely sparkle. Oh, and also shoe buckles can be really sparkly and fun. What's a costume trip I've dreamt of making? Oh, there are so many, but one thing I'd love to do, if money wasn't an option, I would love to do the 18th century Grand Tour, going round to all the European capitals, preferably in a carriage, but maybe not, and going in full kit, in full period, and going around to all the amazing places and seeing where Byron, Keats and Shelley were inspired by the world, and where the Enlightenment took place. That's something I'd love to do. Or going on one of Sensibility's tours that she does, which was great fun. She got me to lecture in Paris, which was amazing, and I got to walk around Paris with her and have macarons and drink champagne and have crepe by the Eiffel Tower. It was an amazing experience. Who's a costumer I'd love to meet? Now, the good thing about costuming is that we're a really inclusive, welcoming bunch, and a lot of us all know each other or have talked to each other, but someone I've never really had contact with as such, but someone I deeply admire, is Before the Automobile. Her outfits are breathtaking, her understanding of proportion and shape and everything is just sublime. I mean, the recent walking outfit she did that she was wearing around Venice before it was closed just blows me away. Beautiful green with black, and it's just, oh. Plain or patterned? Depends, really. But I think if given the option, I always prefer a bit of pattern, because you can have a gorgeous silk with maybe a floral sprig or some small design in it. And you can even have a one colour fabric like a moire, which has a pattern over it. So I think they both have their place, but I think if I had to choose, I would have to pick patterned, because of course, being half Scottish, I can wear my MacLeod tartan. Use a pattern or make your own. Generally, I draft my own. There are some which I use from original garments that I've copied, and talking through with other historical costumiers, as well as with talking with the people at Colonial Williamsburg, who I really miss. What is my favourite era to make and wear? Well, if you haven't guessed already, Regency. And that's simply because it is an era I've fallen in love with in terms of the cut, style and expression that you can use, as well as it's my favourite to make because I'm used to it. I will be making more 18th century, more mid-Victorian pieces as the years go on. I just need time, and I need this to heal first before I can get back to sewing properly. What is the one thing you don't know about me? I don't always hand wash everything. What is your favourite cocktail? Now, I'm so glad you asked. Rather than just telling you, I thought I'd show you. I will be making the Corpse Reviver No. 2. It's a 1920s cocktail recipe from the Saville Book of Cocktails, and it's got a really cool history to it. You will need orange liqueur or Cointreau, Lillet Blanc, absinthe and gin, and lemon juice, as well as a freshly chilled glass. This one just came out the freezer. Now what you want are all of it in equal parts. So here I am adding the lemon juice. So by equal parts, you can either have that as 3/4 of an ounce or an ounce tends to be normal. But hey, it's quarantine, why not pints? 1 pint of lemon juice. And then a pint of gin, pint of Lillet Blanc, pint of Cointreau, and like 2 cups of absinthe. Why not? Why not? Lemon juice, also really good at keeping away scurvy. So next time someone tells you you're drinking too much, just say, I'm just trying to stave off scurvy. You want equal parts of your orange liqueur. In this case I'm using Cointreau, which I need to get some more of. Lillet Blanc. I think some recipes also call for chartreuse, but I'm not entirely sure. Same amount of gin. A dash of absinthe. Absinthe is also known as the green fairy because of its hallucinogenic properties that it was originally made with. I don't think it has it anymore, I should hope not. Excessive use during the 19th century, when it was made dangerously, the high alcohol content and chemical content would have disrupted the eyes. Now, it's a bit of a thing, but some people think that because of the amount of absinthe that Van Gogh would have consumed, then that affected his colour palette, which is why a lot more of his later paintings are yellow. I don't know. Check it out for yourself. And then, of course, you want ice. And then, shake it. And then pour into your chilled glass. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you make a Corpse Reviver No. 2. Happy quarantine. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. The eggs, the eggy eggs. So, as I'm sure many of you have noticed, I cannot count to 5. So my 5th small business that I would like to recommend is Sign of the Grey Horse, who make the most amazing sort of shoe buckles and now pocket watches and other jewellery and such, so really check them out. Their stuff is absolutely lovely, really, really nice. And the YouTuber, the 5th YouTuber I would like to recommend, if you don't already follow her, I'm sure you should, Bernadette Banner, really good friend of mine, who's taught me a lot. Love her to pieces. And I also missed out a question, because clearly I can't count up to 20 either. The question I missed out was whether I prefer machine sewing or hand sewing. Come on, it's clearly hand sewing.
To learn about you is frankly provocative.